Welcome. Today we're jumping into a tool that frankly separates the projects that win from the ones that don't, the Risk Management Plan. We're going to talk about how you can stop just reacting to problems and start turning uncertainty into your secret weapon. Let's dive in.
So let's just kick things off with a big question. Think about it. What really sends so many projects completely off the rails? The ones that blow the budget and miss every deadline? Is it a bad scope? Underestimating the work? Not enough people? Well, sure, those are all symptoms, but they aren't the real disease. The root cause is something else entirely.
The truth is, project failure is almost always a chain reaction of things nobody planned for. It's the stuff you just didn't see coming, or maybe even worse, the stuff you kinda saw but had no real plan to deal with. See, being successful isn't about having zero risks. That's just impossible. It's about shifting from constantly putting out fires to having a smart, proactive strategy that actually anticipates and handles the uncertainty that comes with any project worth doing.
And that leads us right to the solution, the Risk Management Plan. Now, the official PMBOK definition is pretty dry, right? It's the document describing how risk activities are structured. But let's think about it differently. This is your playbook. This is the document that defines your entire project's relationship with uncertainty. It's how we get out of chaos and into a state of control.
I love this analogy of a blueprint. Because think about it, you wouldn't use the same drawings for a backyard shed that you would for a 100-story skyscraper, would you? Of course not. The stakes, the materials, the complexity, they're worlds apart. Well, your risk management plan has to be scaled the exact same way. It has to fit your project's size, its complexity, and how important it is. That idea, that principle of proportionality, is everything.
So here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll hit the big why. Then, we'll map out the framework for building this blueprint. We'll look at the key ingredients you need to get started, the tools you'll use, and then we'll really dissect the plan itself. And finally, we'll cover how to make it all fit your specific project perfectly.
First up, why even bother making this a formal thing? Well, the main reason is to make sure your risk management efforts are appropriate. You want to dial it in just right. So the level of effort, the types of things you do, and how visible you make it all, it has to match the risks you're facing and, just as importantly, how critical the project is to your company.
And it's really important to understand that we're managing risk on two different levels here. First, you've got your individual risks. These are the specific what-if scenarios, right? Like, what if our key supplier goes out of business? But then you've also got overall project risk. That's the big picture. It's the combined effect of all that uncertainty on whether you hit your goals or not. A great plan has to tackle both.
So, how do we actually go about building this thing? We use a really simple and powerful framework called ITTO: Inputs, Tools and Techniques, and Outputs. Now, don't let the acronym scare you. This isn't just jargon, it's a super logical model that helps us build our plan on a solid foundation, using a system instead of just winging it.
Honestly, the best way to think about this is like you're following a recipe. The inputs are your ingredients. You need to get them all together before you start. The tools and techniques are your cooking methods, how you mix, chop, and bake. And the output? That's your delicious finished dish. In this case, the risk management plan itself. All right, first things first, we got to gather our ingredients. Before you write a single word of your plan, you need to have the right documents and information laid out in front of you. This stuff provides the context, the boundaries, and all the constraints you need to build on. Each of these inputs is a critical piece of the puzzle. Your project charter gives you the big picture and any risks that were known from day one. The overall project management plan is crucial because your risk plan has to be in sync with everything else: scope, schedule, budget. The stakeholder register, this one's huge. It helps you figure out the risk tolerance of the key people involved. And finally, you look at the wider organization. Enterprise environmental factors tell you how much risk the company as a whole is willing to take on. And organizational process assets give you a head start with templates and lessons from other projects. No need to reinvent the wheel. Okay, so we've got all our ingredients on the counter. Now what? How do we actually turn this pile of documents into a smart, coherent strategy? Well, this is where our tools and techniques come into play. These are the actions you take to actually build the plan. And these aren't just things you check off a list. They're active, collaborative processes. Expert judgment just means you bring in people who've been there, done that, people with deep experience. Data analysis is where you really dig into what makes your stakeholders tick, to understand their comfort level with risk. And meetings, this is crucial. You hold dedicated workshops where the team and key stakeholders all agree on the rules of the game for managing risk. This gets everyone on the same page from the get-go.
All right, this brings us to the real heart of it all. We've gathered our inputs, we've used our tools. Now let's look at the final product, the risk management plan itself. What exactly is inside this thing that makes it a living, useful guide instead of a document that just collects dust on a shelf?
One of the cornerstones of a great plan is the risk breakdown structure, or RBS. Think of this like a family tree for all your potential problems. It's a way of organizing risk sources into categories, like technical, management, commercial, and so on. Its real job is to make sure you've thought about everything systematically, so you don't have any major blind spots.
Next up is the probability and impact matrix. Now, this chart might look a little intimidating, but the idea behind it is actually super simple. This is how you turn a gut feeling about a risk into something objective you can prioritize. In your plan, you define exactly what high impact means. Like, does it mean a 10% budget overrun, a 4-week delay? This matrix lets you score every risk so you can focus your limited time and energy on the things that actually matter most. And beyond those big tools, the plan also spells out the entire rulebook. It defines your overall risk strategy and methodology. It makes the roles and responsibilities crystal clear so there's no finger-pointing later. It sets up the rules for funding, like how you access money set aside for both expected and unexpected problems. It defines the schedule for timing, reporting, and tracking. This is the part that makes the plan a practical, day-to-day guide for everybody. Okay, so let's bring this all down to earth, because here's the thing. A great risk plan is never a generic copy-paste document. It has to be tailored. It has to be deliberately adapted to the real world of your specific project. The absolute key is to adapt. A small 3-month internal project needs a very different approach to risk than a 5-year, multi-billion-dollar infrastructure program. The plan has to reflect that. You adjust everything, the level of detail, how often you review it, based on what the project actually needs. And the way you're building the project makes a huge difference. For instance, in a traditional waterfall project, you do this massive risk planning session right at the beginning. But in an agile world, risk management is happening all the time. It's something you talk about at the start of every single sprint, which lets the team constantly reevaluate and shift priorities based on the latest risks they see. And that brings us right back to where we started. This quote sums up the entire goal of this process. It's not about creating paperwork. It's a strategic decision to make sure your effort perfectly matches the stakes of the game, so you can protect your project, grab opportunities, and deliver a win. So I'll just leave you with this to think about. Is your risk plan a document you create just to check a box, something that sits on a virtual shelf? Or is it a living guide that actually changes how your team thinks and makes decisions when things get messy? The best project leaders out there, they already know the answer. Thanks for watching.